Hey folks, Cam here, back with you in the kitchen along with some airplanes my kids just made and brought to me. And we're going to be going over the second episode of Moon Knight on Disney+. Now, I'm not going to go over the plot or anything like that like I did in the last video, so I don't know if there will be spoilers or not. What I'm going to do this time is just looking at interesting filmmaking aspects that I noticed during the video, things that you could keep in mind to give you ideas on how to make your videos even better. So we're gonna get right into this now. And I hate it when YouTubers say that. I hear it so much, I guess I said it. But yes, that's what we're doing now. So if you remember from the last episode, if you saw it or not, there was this dog type of thing that was chasing the main guy, Steven. And then all of a sudden he turned into what we think is the Moon Knight at the end, and he's beating him up and stuff. So after that, he turns around, we see what he looks like, and then it cuts to black. And that is where we pick up from the next video. And like I said before, when you're making a video, whether it's a movie, a TV show, YouTube video, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, you have a finite amount of time, usually a very short amount of time, to get people interested and keep watching. So you got to pique people's interest so they're like, I want to see what happens next. And I think once again they did a good job with this. So right off from the beginning, we hear a lot of those sounds that were taking place during that fight that we just saw in the bathroom on the last episode. And then from there, it goes from black to seeing sand, so we're thinking, oh, maybe we're in Egypt now or something like that. But then the camera comes up, we see him startled out of bed and freaks out and falls on the floor. And the reason I think this is so interesting is because we just saw all that stuff happen last episode. Now it's like, wait, was it just a dream? He said before that his body seems to go out and do stuff when he's asleep and he can't help it. But in this case, he's in his bed and he's hooked up to his anklet thing to the railing that's supposed to keep him in his room. So maybe the whole thing was a dream, we don't know. So that, for me, interested me to think, okay, I want to see now what is going to happen. Like, is that all in his head? I don't know. And the other thing to point out is it's very cliche to start out a video with someone waking up. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you're making your first short film, whatever, don't start with someone waking up. Just don't. But in this case, they did it in an interesting way. It's based on something that already happened before, and the guy was like startled out of bed, and it makes sense to do it in this case. But if you start your video with someone laying there in bed and their alarm goes off and they're like, oh, just skip it. I was tempted to do that in a short film I did coming home, and instead of doing that, I started with me in the bathroom looking at myself in the mirror, because you don't have to show every single thing. In this case, it makes sense, but you don't need to show someone getting out of bed all the time. And now every time you watch a movie or a show and you see it start with someone getting out of bed, you're going to think, amateurs. So we go from that to him looking at himself in the mirror. And if you remember from the last episode, the mirror was talking back to him, an alternate personality or whatever, Mark. But I do like their use of mirrors in this. So instead of just looking right at the actor, you're looking at him through a mirror. So that adds some depth automatically, because you have your subjects back in the foreground and then their face is what's focused on in the mirror. So it's almost like a conversation going on, and then you have the reflection behind him in the mirror as well. So you're in a small space, but you still get a good feeling of depth in that. And just like I said, I started out my video coming home like this with me looking in the mirror as well. And it's just a good way to do the frame in a frame type of concept, like I said before. So we've got this square box, his frame. I'll link some videos on that with lots of examples to help give you ideas on that. So, and then the next scene, I know it's like I'm going through scene by scene, but the first few scenes had some stuff I noticed. Set design. Just like we said before, here reminding everyone he is in London, because we have the iconic London red double-decker buses going by in almost every scene where he's outside, and we're going to see that more through this. But it's just a good reminder of where we are without having to tell people where you are. And everyone likes the double-decker buses in London. So he's going back to work, all good. To the very next scene, we have him walking up the steps, overhead view. So overhead's always an interesting way to show stuff, because we don't normally see stuff that way. You don't want to overdo it. For example, in my short film, Bedtime, I didn't want to be boring showing someone walking up the stairs from like a low angle of stairs with me walking up. So what I did was I rigged up my camera with an overhead view looking straight down at the stairs, because part of the joke of that video was the kids aren't going to bed. So just to show constantly how many times I have to go upstairs they're whining about food and drinks and stories and toys and all that type of stuff. So you see that overhead view and kind of dragging slower each time. I'm like, ugh. But in this case, it's kind of interesting what they do. So we're following them, and then the camera keeps going and tilting upside down as he walks into work. And I watched it a couple of times and I was thinking, why? What was the purpose of that? And you see later on, he ends up, spoiler alert, getting fired from his job because of what happened in the previous one when they look at the security footage. But it's almost like, we just saw what happened, and now he knows something's off in his life. And as he's going into his job, things aren't the same, and things are kind of turning upside down for him, His life's turning upside down. So that's an interesting visual way to show that, in my opinion. So then he meets up with the security guard and they go to look at the footage. And when they first step in there, it's pretty interesting how they have it set up. Instead of just being, right up in their faces, it's always good to start with somewhat of a wider view. And in this case, when they do that to show where they are, you get a nice leading line of all the security screens going in to where they're sitting. And I have another video as well on leading lines I'll post up here, but finding those types of things, or even setting things up on your set in a way to do that, will make things more visually interesting, add depth once again, because one of the hardest things in video is adding depth, because you have a two-dimensional image that you're looking at on a screen and you want to give it as much depth as possible so it doesn't look flat and boring. Obviously there's times when maybe you want it that way, if someone feels like their walls are closing in or they don't have any space, they're shut up tight, whatever. But in general, it's just more aesthetic to have a deeper angle there, or a deeper view, I guess. And then, we move into a close-up of them back and forth when we get into conversations after we establish where they are. So establishing shots are always good when you first get into a location. Some more interesting things that happen now. He got the key that he found in his house and realizes to a storage unit. So he goes in there, and as he comes in and talks to the guy, instead of just having your typical, over-the-shoulder shots talking to someone, we have a 50-50 type of shot, but looking through a door window once again. So we have that frame in a frame concept to make things a little more interesting, that adds some depth to the shot and just gives you a different perspective instead of constantly having the exact same, conversational shots. And the thing that's important with this stuff is you have to remember, so many people think, what are the cinematic settings I need on my camera to make my videos look cinematic? Well, aside from frame rate and your shutter speed being double your frame rate, there's not a whole lot in your camera to making something look cinematic. It's more so your lens with depth of field to add some, not contrast, but depth. To separate your subject from the background. Or lighting. Lighting is huge in how you light someone's face. It's going to make it look way different, and how you light the background. Like, I did this on purpose. I turn on the light back there so there's a little bit different color there, and it's not just completely dark behind me. I'm just using a window light once again, but you can still make it more interesting. And angles. If I just had my camera here straight, let's do it. Straight against the wall. This is a nice closed-in, boring shot, but let's get angles on stuff, and now look how much deeper the frame is. So those are the types of things that are going to make your videos more cinematic, and I have lots of videos on that type of stuff, and that's what we're talking about now. So these are the cinematic things. It's not settings in your camera per se. So moving on from that, I like how they used lighting and framing in the next scenes. As they're walking down the hallway, you have this long hallway, leading lines once again, square in the bottom, everything leads to them, and the lights are coming on as they're getting closer. So it's not like you have all the lights on the whole building, everything's lit the same, would be hard to pick them out. Everything's dark up to them, and as they move to each next section, the light pops on for that. So I like how they did that. It's pretty interesting. Visually interesting. Then the guy unlocks and opens the storage unit for him. I'm not sure why they did that, because you have your own key, you can open your own storage unit, but whatever. This is interesting though, how they keep it focused on that. We're unlocking, trying to figure out, what is this thing about that he has this storage unit he doesn't know about. So it's kind of drawing your attention to that, unlocking in a sense. what's going on in his mind perhaps, and the focus stays on that instead of the guy who helped him and he's walking away. And these close-up shots are interesting. You got to be careful with close-ups. You don't want to show close-ups of every single thing if it's not necessary. But using focus on this to keep someone's focus in a specific area is cool. I did this once again in my bedtime video where I kept focus on a doorway where I'd eventually come in and out of each shot, kept the kids in the background kind of blurred out, partly because it made the shot look interesting, but also these are practical things to think about. With doing lots of lines with kids, you can't always expect them to perform when they need to, and you know, my kids aren't actual actors, so being able to dub over afterwards when they're really blurry in the background and can't really tell when their mouths are moving anyways is a great tool to have. So, and the same type of thing here, they could dub over any audio they want after the fact. So depth of field can help you in that sense as well. The colors are really interesting in the shot. You see, it's inside a storage unit, so it's kind of gray, almost green looking here, and his outfit almost blends into everything. So I'm a big fan, you know, of colors, of lighting and stuff, but here it's just interesting because it's really almost all flat and nothing going on. Another thing that's definitely good, I like in movies, TV shows, you know, you have times where things are more serious, right? Even if it's not a comedy, but being able to throw in some humor that fits the scene but doesn't really break what's going on, gives you a little laugh, a little bit of a break of what's going on, but then you get right back and the story's good. And this is pretty funny because if you remember in the last one, he went on a date with a girl, or he was supposed to. He missed it by 2 days because he was off somewhere and didn't realize it because he was asleep. His boss said, "What's a vegan gonna eat at a steakhouse?" And he was like, "I don't know, salad or something." And he ends up eating a steak because he's depressed because he didn't realize he was 2 days late. And so Mark, the other version of him, just laid out all this crazy sounding stuff on why he is how he is. And he's thinking,
oh my God, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I eat one piece of steak and then bam, I go bonkers.
I laughed out loud when I heard that one, but it doesn't really break the feel of the scene. So I thought that was a good use of some humor in a serious part where you're trying to figure out what's going on.
I'm Stephen.
Are you living here with someone else?
No, oh no, this is my mum's flat.
Called it. Remember in the last video, if you saw it, I was saying, you know, he works as a museum employee that makes probably 11, 12 pounds an hour because it's England, and a flat like this would probably be upwards of 3,000 plus pounds per month. So how in the world is he going to pay for it? So maybe his mom's helping him, and we just found out it's his mom's flat. So called it. There you go. I guess they did think it through, just didn't want to tell us till now. And then once again, just to point out one more time, like we said, you know, we're outside in London, and then what do you see? A red double-decker bus in the background. We know where we are, the set is consistent, and I think that's about all we'll cover today because this video is getting long. You'll see a lot of these same things keep recurring in all the episodes because it's a certain style that makes it look good. So give this video a thumbs up if that was helpful for you. I have lots of videos once again on the channel, Instagram, Facebook, private Facebook group there, all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to go on and on. Thanks for watching the channel, guys, and I'll see you soon.